me new things. I hadn't been pastoring very long until God began speaking to me about healing. I was teaching through the Gospel of Luke, and after the 3rd chapter of Luke, if you don't believe in healing, you might as well quit, at least for the next few chapters. And I had to begin teaching healing. And it was the first time in my life I had ever taken it seriously. I really equated healing with charlatanry and foolishness. I didn't think anybody, any human being, much less a Christian, should be involved in that kind of activity. I thought it was illegal activity. And I just didn't want to have anything to do with it. But here I was teaching through, and I had a nice little outline of the 4th chapter of Luke, in which I ignored several key texts. And as I was reading through it, God said, that outline won't do. I said, what's wrong with it? He said, well, you've left these out. I said, I'm not going to put those in, Lord. But over the next few weeks, I began teaching seriously for the first time the subject of healing. Now, the problem with teaching something is that the people don't know you don't believe it. And they begin believing it before you do. And after a few weeks, they didn't want to talk about it anymore. They wanted to start getting healed. And they would begin asking me, when are we going to pray for somebody? I said, oh, no, it's enough just to believe it. They said, no, we want you to pray for us. Well, about the 4th or 5th week, God speaks to me, says, have an altar call. We're going to pray for the sick tonight. Or heal the sick is what he said. An altar call to heal the sick. I did not want to do that. But God told me to. And so I called people forward that day and we prayed for them, and nobody got well. In fact, some of us got sick praying for the sick. We caught their flus, we got their colds, we went home with their headaches. It was awful. Our prayers would come out of our mouths and dribble down over our chins and just hang there. It was the most humiliating experience of my life. And I went home saying to the Lord, I'm never going to do that again. Well, the very next Sunday, He made me do it both Sunday morning and Sunday night. And every week thereafter. After about 8 or 9 weeks of praying for the sick and nobody getting well, I was fit to be tied. I was yelling. I was angry. I did all the things I do when I'm frustrated and hurting. And I was yelling at God for the first time in my life. And I was saying, this isn't right. This is dumb. This is dumb what you're doing here. People are leaving the church. Don't you want people to come to this church? You told me it was your church. Now what's the deal here? And over half the congregation left. In about 9, they got tired. They said, we don't believe this stuff. And slammed their Bible shut and left. They said, we're not going to get involved in this silliness. You know? And I didn't realize there was such hostility over the subject of healing. I didn't realize. I started getting letters, long letters from angry people. You know, you're preaching heresy. You believe that God can heal? I said, I thought I was teaching the stuff out of the book. You know, it's in the book. I read it right here out of the book. But I didn't believe it either. Several weeks went by, and God began dealing with me one day. Well, what had happened was I was studying, getting ready for Sunday, and I closed the Bible and said, I'm not going to do that. And God says, either do it or get out. I said, out? Out, Lord? Out of the ministry? Out of the kingdom? You know, out. What do you mean out, you know? He says, do not preach your experience, preach my word. I said, wait a minute, that's been reversed on me all my life. People have said that. But now you're saying preach something that we're not experiencing. He said, right. I said, this is weird. This is really weird. I don't want to do this, but I don't want to get out either. So I preached. Well, that Sunday was the worst of all. I mean, we had a lady that was demonized. We didn't know what demonized people were. We had this demonized lady come up and practically try to undress in front of everybody. I mean, it was embarrassing, humiliating. We're trying to hide her, you know. It's, you know, weird stuff. You know, I thought, I'm going to leave this church too, you know. All all the time, He's at every meeting. I mean, His presence, a lovely presence is with us. But we didn't know that the presence and the power were the same thing. We'd not been taught that. God hadn't spoken to us. And so the presence would come and we'd all cry and worship the Lord. Well, it was more like this in those days. And, more like that in those days. But, I mean, we were worshiping, we were having a wonderful time. For us, it was total abandonment, We were having a great time at that point. And we would just worship the Lord, and His presence would come, and people would weep, and people would be converted. I mean, from the first day, people have been converted in our ministry. You know something? I've only preached the kerygma, the gospel message, about 4 times in 7 years. And so, I'm definitely not focused from the pulpit standpoint on the unsaved. But we've baptized hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of new converts. I'm not even sure how many. I would guess at least 3,000 over the last 7 years. So God has been saving people in our midst from day one. But not because we were focused on that, but because we were focused on Him. And as we would come into His presence and worship Him, and gather and collect and just give ourselves over to worship, He would just come and rest on us. We could feel His presence. I mean, the air would thicken up. We could feel His presence in the room. God was with us. We knew it. But we didn't know that the presence and the power were the same thing. And so we would pray, and we'd pray these pitiful prayers. Oh God, if you're up there anywhere, if you've ever done anything, anytime, here's a worthy subject. You ever prayed a prayer like that? You have too. You prayed prayers just like that. You're just like me. That's what you're like. And I didn't know how to pray either. One time I was praying one of those kind of prayers. God says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm fixing to get this guy well." He says, "No, you're not." I said, "I thought so." I said, "What's the problem?" He says, "Well, the way you're praying." I said, "What do you mean?" I mean, I had done everything, man. I'd claimed it. I'd named it. I would have done anything in those early. I explored every theology I had ever heard of. I mean, after you failed 500 times, wouldn't you? And we had failed at least that many times. And I was going to do anything. In those. I read every book I could get my hands on anybody that ever had any success on healing anyone. And so we were ready to try anything. He said, "Well, the way you're praying." And I said, "Well, what's wrong?" And he says, "Why don't you pray like we did?" I said, "Like you did?" He said, us guys. I said, "Well, how did they pray?" I had never studied that in my whole Christian experience. And I went home that night and got out the Gospels and just went through and read all the prayers of Jesus. They're really short. See. Rise, pick up your bed, and walk. That's a hot one, isn't it? Here's my favorite. Come forth. Don't you think he did that? Huh? I mean, that separates the men from the boys. Come forth. That's a hot prayer. Now, you're going to look pretty stupid if he doesn't come forth. But, I mean, if he does, you're going to look good. They're going to put your picture in the paper and everything. And after all, that's what it's all about. Isn't that looking good? Well, in any case, then I went home. I mean, after that, I tried to adapt all those prayers. Now, it's strange trying to pray the prayers of the New Testament. Well, that's a whole other subject. We'll get into it later. Suffice it to say that in the early development of the healing ministry here, it was very difficult. We went for nearly a year before we saw the first person healed. The occasion of the first person being healed occurred immediately the night after one of our greatest defeats. Having prayed for somebody for nearly 2 hours that did not get well, I was in utter despair. I threw myself headlong on the floor. I've never been subject to those emotional displays. I threw myself on the floor and just sobbed, and I hit the floor and I said, "Oh God, it's not fair. You tell us to teach what your book says, and you don't back up your act. Here we are, we're doing the best we can do. It's not fair, God. It's not fair. You tell us to believe it, you write it down, you keep it for all of these centuries. I read it, I tell the people that this is what you said. I even say that this is what you said you'd do with what you said. And now you're not doing what you said you'd do if I did my part. It's not fair. You know that one? You do know that one, don't you? Oh, I was brokenhearted. Cried and cried. After a little while, I became sort of conscious, and I looked around, and all my friends were laying there with me. We had all just been broken up over this experience. One of my best friends named Jim, he's a big old guy, and he was super humiliated. And we were up on a stage. It was in a high school auditorium at that time. We were up on a stage behind this curtain, and when he left, Jim walks out, and he steps out through the curtain and looks back and says, "I'm never going behind that damn curtain again." And he's upset. He gets home. This is funny. He gets home, and God gives him a verse. You know how a verse will pop into your mind? And so he goes in and opens up the Bible and looks, and it says, "The Lord dwelleth behind the curtain." Jim is so repentant, he goes out into his backyard and sits down in a chicken coop and throws dirt on his head. God bless him, that man knows how to repent. Well, our worst defeat that night, I go home, I go to bed, I wake up the next morning, the phone's ringing, I go to the phone, and here's a new family in the church, and the guy's on the phone, he says, "Listen, I got a new job. I've got to go to work today. I've got a brand new job. It's just starting today. My wife's sick with a fever. Can you come over and pray for her so she'll get well so she can take care of the kids so I can go to my new job?" I think, I put my hand on, "You're really gunning me into it this time." Look what, this guy believes this stuff. He's going to lose his job. I'll be right there. In my best professional tone. Hang up. I get in the car, and all the way over there, I'm talking to God. I'm saying, this, it's still not right. You know, this is not right. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's not right. It's a mess. So I get there, and I knock at the door, and a guy comes to the door, leads me in the house, and I thought she would be out in the living room in her house. He takes me right straight back into their bedroom. I mean, this woman was sick. No woman would let you see her looking like that. I mean, this woman was sick. You know, sick. Sick. I mean, she was sick. And I looked at her and I thought, oh, she's sick. Not good. Not good, you know. This is not good. This is not going to make me look good. This woman is sick, you know. She had a high fever, her face was all flushed, you know. And I walked over and I mumbled some terrible, I don't know what I said. And I turned around and I began explaining to the guy why people don't always get well when you pray for them. I did. I began explaining to him why they don't always get well when you pray for them. And he's looking at me, but he's a little bit taller than I am, and he's looking over my shoulder and he's grinning. And I suddenly realized he's not looking at me, he's looking over my shoulder. And I turn around, and there's his wife. She's up. She's got her house coat on. She's already brushed her hair, and she's making the bed. And I said, "What happened to you?" And she says, "I'm well. You healed me." I said, "Oh, no, I can't heal anybody." And she says, "Well, you healed me. I'm feeling fine. You know, would you like to stay for some coffee or something, you know?" I said, "No, I think I'll just go." And so there I went out the door. And I get on the front lawn and I look up and I go, "All right! You know, we got one! Woo!" I was so incredibly excited. Oh, I got in the car and I'm driving along and I had a vision. It was the first one I'd ever had. And, I mean, really clear, graphic. And I'm driving along, and it's a beautiful morning, and well, of course it would be. And I'm driving along, and all of a sudden, over the landscape, superimposed over it, as far as I can see, is what looks like a cloud bank. And it's going all the way across the sky. And I look at it and I realize it's not a cloud bank, it's a honeycomb. You ever seen a honeycomb when it comes? Yeah. All right, it's dripping. And below the cloud bank, the honeycomb, are people. And they're in all kinds of different postures. Some of them are very reverent. They're weeping. They've got their hands out and they're catching this honey. And some of them are sharing it with their friends. And other people are coming and dipping their finger in other people's honey. And other people are really irritated. Trying to get out of this honey. And they don't like it. And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm so excited. I pull over the side of the road and I'm sitting there looking at it. And I said, God, what is it? What is it? And he said, John, that's my mercy. He says, for some people, it's a blessing. And for some people, it's not. He said, John, don't ever beg me for healing again. Look at it. There's plenty for everyone. John, the problem isn't on my end. The problem is down there where you are. That was one of the most profound and moving experiences I've ever had. And I've never looked at healing the same way again. I've never gone into the sick and dying's room in the hospital. I've never looked at a child that was in desperate condition. I've watched my friends die and prayed for them, but I've never ever known the desperation of soul that I knew before that moment. Because I know the problem isn't on His end. Our God has sent mercy in the Son. He sent His Word to heal them. Jesus has come. He brought a message of love from the Father. Healing is here. The problem is appropriating it, getting blessed in it, receiving it. Over the next few days, we'll talk to you about many other aspects of this incredible experience of learning how to move in the power of God. Let's all stand. I want to encourage you to keep